This week's Parshah actually is called Shabbat Chazak. Chazak means to strengthen ourselves. And that's the Shabbat that you actually finish one book of the Torah. You're holding in the second book of the Torah, Shemot or Exodus. So this week we're going to finish it. And we're going to start, Leviticus or the book of Vayikra, which mostly talks about sacrifices. Anyway, so that Shabbat, at least the custom of the Ashkenazic Jews is when the person that reads the last part of the Torah, so they say Chazak, Chazak, when it Chazek, which means strengthen yourself, and we'll be strong together. Shows on a unity because we all finished reading the Torah together. So if you look at the end of the parasha, this whole past 5 parashot, it talks about the building of a sanctuary for God, not a sanctuary city. No, not that. It's not for the illegals. Unless you call the Jews illegal. So no. It's actually a sanctuary for God to dwell in there. It's really 4, 5 parashot all together. And then at the end, when finally they build it, so the Torah says that that there was a cloud of God, cloud of glory, that it came on the sanctuary. And God's honor fills up the entire sanctuary. It was so holy that even Moses couldn't walk in there. You're going to see next week's Parsha, God had to invite him. Even Moses couldn't go in. Why? Because the cloud of, which was on God's presence, cloud of glory was there, and Hashem's honor filled up the Mishkan. That's a sanctuary. But so again, if the Torah would end here, it would be fantastic. We're talking about the donations that they gave, and they built the Mishkan, and finally, mission accomplished, God came on the Mishkan. But the Torah goes further. What happens when the cloud went up? So then, Ma'ala Mishkan, Yisu b'Nisad v'chol Maseim. So the Jewish people would travel. In other words, if the cloud of glory went up, that was a sign that God doesn't want to dwell there anymore. He wants the Jews to travel. So that was a sign for the Jews to travel. Then he says, if the cloud didn't go up, okay, so then they knew they have to stay there. So one of the questions, that the commentators ask, the traveling does not belong here. When does it talk about the Jews traveling? That's 2 books from now. After Vayikra, we come to book of Bamidbar or Numbers. Over there, it talks about the traveling of the Jews. But the truth is here, they didn't travel till a year later, not like 3-4 months later, I'm sorry. They didn't travel till 3 or 4 months later, or at least 2 months later. Why is the Torah suddenly talking about traveling? This is not the place. It should have finished that when they finished accomplishing building the sanctuary, God came and dwelled there. That's a question that they ask. So they actually there's many answers given, but one of the beautiful answers that they give, that truly I think it has to do with today's life also. You see, whenever God was dwelling in the temple, on the sanctuary, it's no big deal to feel God's presence and to be a good person. The trouble is when God is not so much present, right? When God is hidden. So over there, if you're going to actually act the way God wants, then we're heroes. Otherwise, no. Let's say if I come to a synagogue, right? On Shabbat, of course, I'm not going to smoke in a synagogue, right? If I want to come to a synagogue, I'm not going to do something wrong because I feel God's presence. There are people at least around me. Once I go outside when nobody's around, then the question is, do I actually take the message of the Torah, the message of God with me outside or not? If I do, that means this is something which is internalized with me, is part of me. Doesn't matter where I am. But if, let's say, I go do something opposite, that means I did not internalize what God wanted. Right? There are certain things, that is part of us. No matter where we go, we're going to do it. Everybody in their level. So this is what the Torah is telling us. When God came and filled up the Mishkan, filled up the sanctuary, yeah, of course, the Jews felt God's, presence. There was no problem. They were religious, nothing big deal. But once the cloud went, that means the Shekhinah, God's presence, wasn't amongst them. So the Torah mentions it to tell us that, the Jews actually felt the presence of God, not only when God was revealed on the temple, but even when they were traveling, they still felt it. That's one of the explanations given. That's why here it talks about God's going away from on top of the Jews to tell us that even then, nevertheless, they felt God's presence. What does that have to do with us today? You see, what happens is there's a question really, what kind of a generation do we have? If you usually talk to a lot of religious people, They say this generation is one of the worst. That's what they say, right? Unfortunately. But the truth is, if you look at it the other way, it's actually one of the most, I would say, beautiful generations. The olden generations, when you had hundreds of righteous people, tzaddikim, right? You had like the Lubavitch Rebbe's, you had the Chofetz Chaim, you had the Ben Ish Chai, all these, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, all these great people, they were leaders, right? So we had someone to go to actually get inspired to do something. So over there, again, it's a great thing to be religious. I'm not saying no, but at least it was a lot easier. The real test comes today when it's completely dark. It's such a, backwards world. I was saying, honestly, like you go, I go to public schools. Like you see sometimes things that don't make sense. Like even if you look in politics these days, right? What's the whole thing that the Democrats again? I'm not into politics, Republican, Democrat, but they fight that if somebody decides today is going to be a girl or a boy, he's allowed to go to the opposite bathroom. You know what I'm saying? What do you gain from that? Why are you pushing it? Right? It really doesn't make sense. All these woke stuff are things, that even any logical person says it doesn't make sense. Like, if a kid one day comes, I feel like a girl, I think they wanted to pass it in California. That even kids that are minors, without telling their parents, they're allowed to change their, whatever, what do we call it? Their gender, whatever the word is. Right? Again, if I want, what? Yeah, no, actually change their body, do surgery.
Transition. No, you have to like tell the parents if the teachers didn't legally didn't have to tell the parents they were trying to pass.
You know what I'm saying? If you want to buy a cigarette, if you're not 21, they don't give it to you. You want to buy alcohol, they don't give it to you. But if you want to go change your body, that actually you might even regret it because you're not mature yet. I'm not even talking from the religious point of view, from logical point of view. It doesn't make any sense. So we're living in such a woke world, and nevertheless we see Jews are really struggling to keep whatever Judaism says. This is when God is hidden, and nevertheless we keep. So that's actually a very, very beautiful generation. This is our generation. In the darkest times, we're still keeping strong. We keep Judaism as much as we can. So this is one of the messages, that we get from this week's portion. If you have been in the Hasidic groups, right? Like Hasidim are very, very connected to the Rebbe. You have been around Chabad, right? So talk about the Lubavitch Rebbe. Every day talk is always Lubavitch Rebbe. So there was actually a story with one of the Rebbes of Hasidic Gur. I think it was a city in Europe called Gur. So there were the Hasidim. So one of the Rebbes, his name was Beit Israel. He lived in Israel at that time. So one of his followers wanted to go to Germany to do some business. So he says, okay, when you go to Germany, I want to go to a certain store, buy me this type of a cigar. So say, what? My Rebbe wants to smoke cigars. But my Rebbe probably has some reasons. He goes to Germany, he was so much busy with his business that he forgot to buy the cigars. So his plane comes back into Israel. He says, oh my gosh, I didn't buy the cigars for my rabbi, it's pretty bad. What am I going to do? So he went to, in the airport in Israel, bought a cigarette that was from Germany, a cigar, that was from Germany, it looked like a German cigar, and he brought it to his Rebbe. So obviously the Rebbe, he knows, he has Ruach HaKodesh. So he says, no, tell me, where do you get this from? So he couldn't lie. He says, sorry, I got it from the Ben Gurion airport. So he tells him, listen, you think I need cigars? I wanted to teach you that even when you go far away from your Rebbe, you should remember him. If you're coming back to Israel and you remember him, it's not a big deal. So they bring this story to teach us the same thing here. When God was dwelling in the Mishkan, in the sanctuary, okay, the Jews behaved because God is present. The Torah is telling us that God even removed himself when they were traveling. Nevertheless, then they actually behaved very well too. That's a good part of it. That's one thing that we know from here. I wanted to share with you actually a couple stories. Guys, keeping Shabbat is very important. I think I spoke about it last week, right? About keeping Shabbat. It's actually so important that you can't even build the Mishkan, the sanctuary on Shabbat. There was one thing I didn't speak about, and that is, I'm sure a lot of people are a little bit familiar with Arvit, the evening services that we pray. So at the end of Arvit, before we do the silent prayer, so we finish saying that HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shomeret Amo Yisrael La'ad, that God protects the Jews forever. When it comes to Friday night, we don't say it. We don't say God protects the Jews forever. We say God puts the canopy of peace on top of all the Jewish people. It says Hapores Aleinu. It says Sukat Shalom Berachamim. He puts like a canopy of peace and mercy. Why don't we mention about God protecting us on Shabbat? So it's brought down in Halakha, in the code of Jewish law, because when the Jews keep Shabbat, so the day of Shabbat actually protects them. They don't need the special protection that God should protect them from harm. That's what the Halakha says. So people that do keep Shabbat, they have an extra protection that Shabbat itself protects them. So we don't say God protects us on that day. So there's actually a couple stories that I wanted to share with you. One of them is like more recent. One of them is probably as old as 200 years old. When we talk about Russia, Russia wasn't only aggressive in these days. You go back, even previous generations, they always wanted to conquer more land. Going back 200 years ago, they always attacked Poland. And then the Polish people would rebel against them and take back their land. And then the Russians would attack again. So this, that they attack Crimea or Ukraine, is nothing new. And it's unfortunate. I come from Iran. Actually, Iran used to be a lot bigger. But then, the Russians attacked and they did take some parts of the northern part. I think the Caspian Sea used to belong almost fully to Iran. But when the Russians attacked, only the southern part belongs to Iran right now. So they always attacked. So, this story happens around 200 years ago when they attacked Poland. So, the Russians took it over. And one of the generals, he loved to drink, guess what? Vodka. That's it, right? That's like water. So he wants to drink vodka as a Friday night. So he's asking his soldiers, where is there good vodka here? Jews make the best vodka. At least in Russia they did. Because they didn't mix water in there. They gave you pure, I guess. They say about some gas stations, they put water in the gas. I don't know if it's true. Honestly, I don't know. They used to say it about Arco many years ago. Don't buy Arco gas. Maybe it's Lashon Hara. I don't know if it's true or not. But whatever the case is. So they ask, who has the best vodka? And they research, they see there's a certain Jew. I don't know what his name was. The story doesn't say, but let's call him Abraham. It says this guy, Abraham makes the best vodka. So the general sends his soldier to get it. And then he knocks on the door of Abraham. Abraham says, what do you want? I want some vodka for my general. He says, sorry, it's Friday night, Shabbat, I don't do business. I can't sell you vodka. So he goes back to his general and he says the Jew refused to sell because he says he doesn't do business on Shabbat. So the general tells his soldier, go tell that Jew, if he knows what's good for him, he better give me some vodka. Otherwise, he won't see tomorrow. When he goes back, so the Jew says, I don't do business. But if your general wants to have vodka, these are the keys to my cellar. Go give it to him. You should go pick up whatever he wants. So he takes the keys and he takes it to the general. The general says, this Jew is crazy. He gives the keys to a store. I'm going to teach him a lesson. So when he finds out where the house is, he comes to the house of the Jewish person. He was watching from the window. I'm sure as little kids, maybe as adults even now. How beautiful Shabbat table is, right? And I don't know, that relaxation, the mothers of the house, they make this beautiful table, beautiful candles, the best food, right? If you're Ashkenazi, gefilte fish. If you're Persian, I don't know what you like, maybe korma sabzi or gundi, or whatever it is. Moroccan fish, awesome, right? You like it with the olives or with chickpeas, or both? Chickpeas. I like the olive one more. Or whatever, tastes are different. So everybody has the beautiful, nice food. So this Russian comes and he sees such a beautiful family. The guy's sitting with his wife, kids. So he felt bad to come in and, scold him for giving the keys, being like so crazy. He just comes in and he says, I'm the general. And they invite him to the table. He had a very good time. He had all the food he drank. And at the end, he puts 4 golden coins on the table as a reward for, giving him food. And he said, you know what? I don't want it. I don't do business on Shabbat. You're my guest. It's an honor for me. I don't want any food at all. So when that happened, when the general left the house, his whole opinion about the Jews changed. I was telling the kids today in school, Jews are not what they tell you in the media. Jews are very nice people. Just the media, like everything else, distorts it. Makes us the aggressive people. I was actually today in, that school, Portola. So there was, 2 African-American kids want to come to the Jewish club. Then a Jewish group comes and he says, Rabbi, you know what he said to me? He said to me that we are bad people, we're killing the Gazans, So what, I mean, the guy wanted to come inside to the Jewish level. Said, "Listen, I want to ask you something. You know, the Bible says God creates everybody in His image. I mean, we don't have a right to go. I mean, I didn't say these words. I said, but whenever you see a person, you have to look at him as the image of God. If you say something bad to somebody else, it's like you're actually attacking the image of God. So, anyways, I don't know if he accepted it or not. But again, unfortunately, on the news, they make us really look bad.
But Rabbi, why did he want to come in the first place?
It's African American for the pizza. Oh, I came for the pizza. Yeah, of course. I mean, that's okay. You know, there were a lot of non-Jews that came to the Jewish clubs. They actually learned a lot. One of them is like a, I don't know, Filipino or something. We still talk to each other once a year on his birthday. See, I'm seeing some of them change.
I have like a teaching class for semis, but 6 foot distance.
No, again, you if you have to suspect them, you suspect them. But again, you have to be nice to them. They might change. You can never know. If they hate Jews, it's because they're uneducated about the Jews. They have the false information. And some of them are very good people. If you give them the right information, they will change their mind. I mean, as you see, there's a lot of, not a lot, a few Palestinians. The son of Hamas, he's very pro-Jew.
That's one.
What about that lady, Gabriel? What's her name? Bridget Gabriel?
Yeah.
The Bridget, her name is Bridget.
She's Lebanese, right?
She's Lebanese.
Yeah.
And they put cigarettes on her body when she was a kid, the Hezbollah people. She goes and actually defends Israel. They have a few. So anyways, going back, the Russian, actually, the general, his opinion completely changed about the Jews. Anyways, one day, these Russians come and attack the hotel where Abram used to run, they had his business. Why did they attack him? They said, well, we found a few rebels, Polish rebels, that wanted to kick the Russians out. And when we put them in jail, we found in their pocket of their jacket that they made their meeting in your hotel. So we suspect that you're actually an accomplice, whatever you want to call it. You're actually part of them. So as much as the guy pleads and he says, not really, I don't know, how many people come to my hotel? They don't care, they throw him in jail. So he's in jail, the poor guy crying. And then one day, when he was sitting in jail until his court case will show up, what happens is somebody comes into the jail. He was like in charge of prisons. And he sees him and he says, Abraham, is that you? So he says, yeah, who are you? He couldn't see, he was crying, the poor guy. Anyway, so he says, I'm that general that I came to your house. He says, I changed my position. I'm not anymore in the army, but what I do, I'm in charge of all the prisons. So once in a while, I come and I check the prisons who are there, take care of them or whatever it is, or maybe punish them, or first take care of them. And he says, what are you doing in jail? And he tells him the whole story. And he says, I'm not really at fault. I don't know who comes to my hotel. Many people come. You think I check them if they're rebels or not? So this Russian says, I promise I'm going to save you. So whatever, he was a very high position guy in the Russian government. And he says good things about this Jew, Abram comes home. So the story ends when he came home. So his wife says, no, how did you get saved? She was shocked. And he says, the queen saved me. Obviously, which queen? You could guess. It says Shabbat queen saved me. Because he actually kept Shabbat that time. He didn't do business with the Russian person. So that's what made him change his mind. Because he kept Shabbat, Shabbat came to rescue him. So day of Shabbat is a very important thing. I said it last week also. If we can't keep Shabbat completely, we could at least keep it a little bit. If that means Friday nights, I'm going to spend time with my family. Whether that means that on Shabbat, I'm not going to go to a mall shopping. I'm going to push it up to Saturday night. I'm going to push it up to Sunday. That itself definitely is worth it a lot. I think I did say it last week too. I'm not sure. There was a rabbi that lived in Brooklyn. Brooklyn used to be fully Jewish, right? From one neighborhood to the next. Thank God, after a few years, Jews did a lot better. So they moved to Queens, then to Great Neck, then to Kings Point. So now half of Brooklyn is not Jewish anymore. So many years ago, there was a certain area that was full of Jews, but then the Jews did better, they all moved. So the rabbi, that was a rabbi that he only had maybe, 12, 13 people coming to him on Shabbat. When his son got married, his son moved out of that neighborhood too, because not too many Jews. Now his son, gets married, he has a child, the bar mitzvah of the child comes, this big rabbi's grandchild. So his son calls and he says, Father, because it's the bar mitzvah of your grandchild, maybe come to us. We're going to have a Shabbat bar mitzvah. So the rabbi says, I'm not coming. I'm going to come on Sunday for the party. Why? He says, because if I don't stay here and I don't keep the shul open, So probably there won't be a minyan. So because the synagogue is not open, what would these people do? They were not Shomer Shabbat anymore. Anybody that kept Shabbat moved to a very Jewish area. It says they're going to go to the park, smoke cigars, and play backgammon. If I stay here and they come to the synagogue, at least for 3 hours, they're keeping Shabbat. So one thing, it's a very true story. This happened years ago. So one of the things that I learned from this is even if somebody cannot keep the entire Shabbat, if he keeps a little bit, even if it's 2 hours, even let's say if he just goes for a Friday night to pray, at least that hour that's in the synagogue, he's doing a positive thing. He's not doing Mechalel Shabbat. And honestly, these things will change a person. We had a whole group of kids here that they were in 8th grade. They started coming from 8th grade. I remember in the beginning when they came on Shabbat, they would have their cell phones in their pockets and talk on the phone. When they saw me, they were like so embarrassed, they put it in their pockets. I didn't say anything. Anyways, they love to play backgammon. No, I'm sorry, Monopoly. And then when they played Monopoly, they would play until 5 in the afternoon. When we asked them, we're davening Mincha, we got to go. They wouldn't stay for Mincha. They only played until, Mincha started. Then we used to give them, I don't know, like salsa and chips. They said right after like 6 months, salsa and chips, we're not going to come to shul anymore. So then this whole food started, orange chicken and this and that. Honestly, there were like 5, 6 kids. 2 of them finally went to yeshiva in Israel. They're so religious, they don't come to our synagogue anymore. It's not religious enough for them. I'm not kidding. And so the people that hang around here are not too religious. And then even the other ones that didn't go, they all became Shomer Shabbat. I'm saying they were in a very good environment. They were playing, and now they're all Shomer Shabbat, thank God. And some of them are married now. It's Baruch Hashem, fantastic. And that all started because, we didn't want them to go in the streets on Shabbat. We said, come here, play Monopoly, no problem. Many times they raided the kitchen. Many times, there was no food in the afternoon because they overate. But, we overcame all the challenges. We made extra food, no problem. And, thank God their life actually changed. So one thing that we learn is there's no such thing, either keep everything or nothing. Whatever we can keep actually is fantastic. So that is one story that we got. Another story that happened, this was with the Lubavitcher Rabbah. If you have any questions, by the way, please ask. No questions? You're not bored yet? Okay. Another one that happened, this story is, there's a lot of stories, from many, many tzaddikim. So these are from the Lubavitcher Rabbah. The story was, there was a man that his name was David Solomon. I don't know where he lived, somewhere in New York. He was married and he had only one daughter. Very, very rich guy. He had a house with like 5 or 6 bedrooms. So, men have a business head, most of them. So he told his wife, why do I need such a big house? Let me go sell it. You only have one daughter. Who needs it? Make a lot of money and I invested in my business. But women think a lot more with family. It says, yeah, we have one daughter, but she's going to get married. She's going to have, a few children. We're going to have a few grandchildren. I want them all come here and have their own room. I'm not selling this house. So what does a good husband do?
Rents it out.
No. Does he listen to the wife or disobeys the wife? That's it. You're going to be a good husband because you listen to your wife. That's it. You see how I get them? Of course, whatever, he wasn't in need of money. The guy was rich. He just thought he's going to make a bigger business, sell the house, make money, make your business bigger. The wife didn't want. He said, fine, I'm not going to do that. They actually say a joke. They said when you go after 120 years in the other world, there are 2 lines. One is the line for the men that listen to their wives, and one is in the line, that people didn't listen to their wives. So they have 2 different lines. It's a joke, it's not true. So then one guy dies, and he says, in the line, there's all these buff guys, heavy-duty guys, they're all in the line that they listen to their wives. And then there's this weak guy standing on the other side. He's a guy that didn't listen to his wife. So he said, sir, what are you doing in this line? He says, my wife told me to come here. That means everybody listens to their wives. A lot of bad jokes, I'm sorry. So anyways, he didn't sell the house. He listened to his wife. So one day he gets a phone call, one Friday night. I think the daughter went to a movie with somebody. On the way back, there was a terrible accident. Very bad accident, and the girl actually was in a coma, in a terrible coma. The parents didn't know. The doctor says, we don't know, she might live few months, few days. I don't know. No one knows, God knows. So what they used to do is sometimes the wife would go to the hospital, stand on top of her head. Sometimes the husband did. And he was doing his business from the hospital a little bit, I guess, whatever, through phone calls. I don't think there were computers those days, or at least not advanced ones. So what happens is one day he was talking to one of his friends doing business on the phone, and the business associate says, "You don't sound good. What's wrong?" So he says, "Well, my daughter had an accident." So this guy says, "Listen, I'm not religious, but I've heard there's a young rabbi, the Lubavitch Rabbi in New York. This was in the 60s. That he could make miracles. Maybe go to him, and ask him to give a blessing for your daughter." So in the beginning, he refused. But when you're desperate, you do anything, right? If somebody's in danger, you go, even things that you don't believe in. Sometimes you do. So he decided to make an appointment with the Lubavitch Rabbi. He goes to his office and he says, "Rabbi, I'm going to give you some money. Please pray for my daughter to get well." So the rabbi tells him, "I'm not responsible for your daughter. It's something that God did. I can't take the money and guarantee she's going to get better." So this guy thought that he didn't give enough money. You know how people play games. So look, I'm going to add to the money. So the rabbi told him, "No, I don't want your money because I'm not responsible." So this went on for a while, and he says, "You know what? If you start keeping Shabbat, I'm going to pray for your daughter to become better." He couldn't, a guy that is in business, makes millions of dollars. He can't keep Shabbat, especially if he wasn't brought up religious. And then the rabbi tells him, if you cannot keep Shabbat, at least start keeping it. And I pray for your daughter to be better. So the story says that actually at that time, for the first time after many, many years, he made Kiddush in the hospital and a cup of wine on top of his daughter's head. And he did it for a few weeks, and after a while, the daughter started feeling better. So anyways, it looks like they became religious, or at least the daughter became religious. She's married, she has many kids, and they still have that 5-bedroom house. They didn't sell it. Again, this story was written in the 90s. I don't know what's going on now. But again, we see another point that if you keep Shabbat, it actually brings a lot of blessings. Shabbat is the source of all blessings. These are, just a couple of small stuff. And then we're going to go to the restaurant. One of the clothes that the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, used to wear, that they made it in this week's portion, it was a blue robe. It was called the Me'il. Now, this was made very funny. There's actually an argument how it was made. Rashi says that it was actually like like the dresses that ladies wear, as long sleeves, comes all the way down. That's what it was. The Maimonides knows, no, it was like a talit, these that we wear, that is cut on both sides. So it was like a long talit. It was made from blue wool, a wool that they painted blue, dyed it blue. But then in the bottom, there was like, ornaments that looked like pomegranates. It was made from fabric. And between them or inside them, there's an argument, they had bells with a clapper. So when the Kohen Gadol used to walk, it made noise. Because when you walk, the bells move. So the clapper goes on the bell and it makes noise. So now, what was the point of that? People don't like noise. Why did he wear such clothes to make noise? So they said because the Kohen used to walk into the holy place of the Beit HaMikdash, either to light the menorah, or he walked in there, for example, to burn the incenses, whatever it was, or whatever services that he did. So then the noise was like, actually knocking on the door, telling God that I'm coming in. So he doesn't come suddenly without giving the news of his coming. Now, obviously, God doesn't need it. God knows everything. So the Medrash says, why did God want him to make noise as if he's asking permission to come in? It says he wanted to teach us a lesson. Even a husband or a wife that comes into their own house, before you walk in, knock on the door. Let your wife know that you're coming. Maybe she's in the middle of doing something that she doesn't feel comfortable, to see the husband or to see the wife. So again, we see that the Kohen, even though he was such a holy person, it teaches us actually lessons in derech eretz, in proper conduct. I'm saying, there are many times, a mother or a father feels free. This is my daughter, this is my son, who cares? Just walk in. Especially old Persian-minded people. And I'll be honest, like, there was one time, was this younger girl that got married. The mother-in-law is a Persian lady. So she walked into the room. So she was like, embarrassed. So she says, "You like my daughter? Why you so feel that?" Yeah, even the daughter should have privacy. Even the sons should have privacy. I'm saying? That's to be respect. But again, unfortunately, in Iran, such a thing didn't exist. So I always thought, you need the Kohen Gadol to teach you this. I guess, yes, we do. So he had these bells that used to make noise to teach us that you actually make a phone, whatever, you knock on the door before you walk in. Very, very important. You guys all going to get married one day, Bezrat Hashem? It's not the size of the skirt, right? Size of the heart. You know that. And we tell the girls it's not the size of the ring, right? Size of the heart. Correct? So one of the things that we actually teach boys and girls when they get married, unfortunately, in the outside world, there's a lot of trash, right? Especially if in the professional world, ladies don't come outside the way they look at home. They come out, they put so much makeup, the most beautiful clothes. So even somebody who's not that attractive becomes the most attractive person. No, I'm very serious. So imagine the guy comes home and his wife is busy, I don't know, making ghorme sabzi, smells from ghorme sabzi. They say it in Persian. I'm saying Persians always say, "Buye ghorme sabzi mide," means like he smells from ghorme sabzi. Why did I choose ghorme sabzi? I have no idea. But that's the expression they use. So we always teach them, before you just barge in, when you leave your office, pick up the phone, make a phone call and say, "Dear, I'm coming home. I'll be there in half an hour." Why is that important? Because imagine, especially in the religious community, they have 2 kids, 3 kids. The oldest kid is 3 years old, and the youngest kid was just born. So basically, she has to change 3 diapers, take care of 3 kids. I'm exaggerating, but I'm saying she's busy doing things. So imagine the husband comes home, she's full of sweat, she's, I don't know, cleaning up. She's not presentable to the husband. And he sees all these beautiful ladies outside. I mean, at least they make themselves look. And he comes home, if he sees a beautiful wife, obviously, he's actually going to enjoy it, which is something he's allowed to do. So we always tell them, don't just barge in the house. We learn from the Kohen Gadol, right? The bells are the phone calls. Before that, even make a phone call, so she could go. She could go to the wash. No, that for sure. But I'm saying, even before, let her prepare herself for the husband. You call, I'm coming in half an hour. She has time to go wash the face, put some makeup, put some perfume. Wash the ghorme sabzi. So you try your part, Yeah, sometimes we're not successful in whatever we do, but you get the point. Don't make us surprised. She shouldn't make you surprised either. Only good surprises. Good surprises, honey, I bought a ticket. We're going to Hawaii. That's a good surprise. Or Israel is even better. Yes. Everybody goes to Europe. I don't know what's wrong with Israel. Go to Israel. Just don't go to Gaza. That's it. The rest is good. Yeah, once Trump makes it into a business place, it might happen. He has his way of doing things. Yeah, whatever he does for the good of Israel, may God give him strength to do it. Amen. Whatever good he does. Anyway, so guys, sorry, the class was a little bit short because I had a very, very long day. But please, for Passover, guys, do not forget, for the first 2 nights, please try to buy handmade matzah, shmura matzah. I'm going to go through why we do that. If anybody has monetary problems that they can't buy it, I think they sell it like for $25 outside per pound. We have it in the synagogue for $18 per pound. Because we are Jewish, we got it from Costco for $16 before the prices went up. So we could sell it actually cheaper than outside. But again, why is it so important to have handmade matzah? So there is a halacha that the matzah has to be made for the sake of the mitzvah of matzah. That means if I give it to somebody that doesn't know just let me explain it better. When somebody writes a Sefer Torah or Tefillin, if he just writes it, he's not kosher. He has to write it for the holiness of the Sefer Torah, or for the holiness of the Tefillin that he writes. Because your intention actually makes a difference in what you write. It's not what's the difference what I think. No, when it comes to holy things, your intention really does matter. So when somebody writes a Sefer Torah, he has to write that I'm writing it for the holiness, for the kedusha of Sefer Torah. When it comes to matzah, when they put it in the oven, they're not just making bread. They're doing it for the mitzvah of matzah. If they don't, you can't do the mitzvah. So the matzah that are made with machines, machine matzahs, the machines don't have any brains to think that it's for the mitzvah of the matzah. The only one that might have that is the first button that you push, right? I don't know exactly how to make it, but I'm just studying the books. When you push the button, so the first matzah that comes out is from your power. So only the first one is kosher. Many people say machine-made matzot, again, they're kosher to eat on Pesach, but they're not kosher for the first 2 nights. Because the first 2 nights you have to eat matzah. The rest you could just eat anything which is not chametz. You could eat rice, you could eat meat, whatever. You don't have to have matzah. The first 2 nights you have to have matzah. So according to many opinions, because the machine has no mind, you're not doing the mitzvah. And every night of Passover, you only have to have at least 30 grams. That's 1 ounce. So even if you buy 1 box of matzah, and there's 6 or 7 in it, and an ounce is like half a matzah, there'll be enough for both nights. These guys, go out of your way, make sure that you buy the handmade matzot.
How do you know it's handmade?
It says on it. It says avodat yad, or handmade matzah, and they're usually round.
Oh, my dad gets those.
Or if you just handmade,
Yourself, you have to know the laws not to be chametz.
is it like, it's not too hard?
It is hard. It is hard. Believe me.
I remember like as a kid, they used to bring like somebody, they come.
Yeah, they just show you how it works, but they tell you do not eat it on Pesach.
Oh, really?
Sure, they tell you eat it before. Yeah, it's just a model. It's called the model matzah bakery. It's not a real matzah kosher for Pesach.
Like that Muslim bakery where you go and like they tell you like the whole story of Passover.
Right.
Matzah, it's not-
Chabad is very big at that. No, if you go to the matzah bakery, maybe it's kosher. But I'm saying the ones that they make in front of me in the school.
The ones they bring to you, no.
If you go to an actual, if you go to a Chabad house, no, it's not kosher for Pesach. You went to a matzah bakery, so then over there is good. That is good because they watch it.
But when you say like you have to do it for the mitzvah, you don't have to go through like talking about Passover. Everything.
No. When you put the dough in the oven, you say I'm putting it in for the sake of the mitzvah of matzah. And I think it's enough if they think it at the beginning of the job. Let's say if he's going to do it for the next 2 hours, he doesn't say it for each one. He says it and has in mind that the intention goes for the rest of the day. But I guess if he stops working and then he comes back, he has to say it again.
It's like eating an apple to say the bracha.
Then why-
Certain extent, yeah.
Like why? You said the other opinion is like with the machine they matzah. The first one, you press the button.
And you think I'm doing it for the sake of the mitzvah of matzah.
I don't know all the other ones. Like unless you walk away, like why don't all the other ones?
Because the machine makes it on its own.
Make flow from your intent?
Yeah, but you're not doing any action. When you put it in, every time you're doing an action. It's not just the intention, it has to be the action with the intention. It has to be both together. If I have intention to put on tefillin, but I don't put it on, it's nothing. You have to have the action with the intention. Anyways, thanks God, guys, for coming. Please, let's go to Tel Aviv this week.